Hey, what's going on, everybody? Ryan Knuppel here with USAWager.com. Today we have an interview with the one and only Kevin Krest. Kevin, how are you today?
I'm good. Very good. Football season has started, so I'm happy.
Football is here, and people are probably asking me, "Hey, why are you talking to Kevin Krest? What's Kevin Krest on the show for?" Well, let me give a little background to why. So, first of all, Kevin wrote this amazing piece out on USAWager.com called "Any Adults Left in the College Football Room," where Kevin really tackles some of the issues and some of the big topics in college football. And so we're going to dive into that, and we're going to really talk to Kevin and get his honest thoughts on why he wrote this, and maybe some of the comments he made in it, and really pick his brain as to what he's thinking to this. So, Kevin, after I give that quick background, what was your motivation for writing a piece like this?
Well, and as you know, I've written 4 novels, PK Fraser series, and in one of them, it was about college football and the playoff system, how it got started. I used a fictional version of an 18 playoff that started back in the late 90s. But we talked a lot about, in that book, the lead character, about the problems within college football and how the playoff was supposed to solve some of those. And so I'm concerned today, as a longtime fan and also as a journalist, that things are getting out of control in college football. Nobody seems to be in charge. And that's true, actually. Nobody is in charge. The conferences are in charge of their own rules, destiny, membership, scheduling. And that's a concern. And it really came to light this past week when you had the Pac-12, the ACC, and the Big Ten go, well, we're going to take our ball and go in a different direction. And the SEC, meanwhile, is bullying everybody around because they've won 15 of the last 20 national championships, and they can do anything they want because they've got Alabama and they've got Georgia and they've got all the money in the Southeast and they've got that locked up. And nobody's having any long-term concern for the sport itself, and in particular, the very athletes that fuel the entire sport, the players. And managers and trainers and the student aspect of this. And so I know that we've come a little way, but my motivation was to just try to point out that somebody needs to take control of this sport. The college presidents need to, get their heads out of their proverbial you-know-whats and assign responsibility to a group. They did it with the college football playoff. They've already done it, right?
Yeah.
And so why not take that to the next level and get the NCAA the heck out of it, because they don't know what they're doing. That's not what they're good at. They're good at a lot of things, by the way, but they're not good at that, right? Yeah. They are not good at trying to, regulate a sport, which at this point is totally unregulated in many ways. And so that was why I wanted to dive into this piece.
So why do you think there's no leadership? Why do you think that we're in this spot now? I mean, are there, and I'm kind of leading you through your article a little bit, but what are some of the reasons you think that this is happening, that there is no leadership?
Well, money.
It's always that, right? Always money.
Right. Once the money got really big, and when you start paying coaches 8-figure salaries, and by the way, it's not the schools paying the coaches 8-figure salaries. It's foundations and donors, and it's not the colleges. Nick Saban makes, I think it's $230,000 or something like that from the state of Alabama. Now, he still is, I believe, the highest paid person in Alabama, but they don't pay him that. And so there's a misconception there, but the money got so big, and the players are going, wait a second, what's going on here? Even fans but the money is one thing. Another thing is that I believe that with the money came this need for every team to try to win a national championship, which is insane.
Mm-hmm.
I live here, and I'm in the SEC footprint and pretty close to the Big 12 footprint. And I can tell you right now that Arkansas and Texas Tech have no chance of ever winning a national championship under this era. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yet the expectation, the donors think that can happen. Okay, so you have that. You have these. You have a college football playoff that's designed to take the top 4 teams. Yet there's so much inequity in the scheduling. How do you determine who really are the top 4 teams? You can't do that today.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example. Obviously, Clemson and Georgia opened the season on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
That is in essence a college football playoff elimination game, right?
You're right.
So the playoffs have already started. I mean, people don't really think, but the playoffs start Saturday. You've got Alabama playing Miami. If Miami knocks off Alabama, Alabama's in really big trouble because their schedule is nothing.
Yeah.
And so, but then you have, even within the SEC West, you have Texas A&M who plays Alabama at home, and then from the other half of the league, they don't play the top teams. They don't play Georgia. They don't play Florida. So they have a scheduling advantage over other teams. And, as we're doing for our site and for some of our clients recently, I've been doing a lot of these previews for particular teams. And you start to realize how much inequity there is in the scheduling. And I've written about this for years. And I think that's a big key. You cannot have a level playing field when you've got such inequity in scheduling. The ACC and SEC, who, by the way, have won the last all but one of the last 11 national championships have been won by the ACC and the SEC, and they only play 8 conference games. I don't think that's a coincidence. The other conferences play 9. So right there you've got, while Alabama is playing Samford on the third Saturday in November, Ohio State is playing Wisconsin. Well, you can't have any kind of semblance of equity in that kind of situation. So the scheduling is out of control. The Big 12 they play a round robin. They play everybody in their conference only because somehow the Big 12 has 10 teams, but that's a whole different issue. The math and geography issue are a whole other issue within college football.
Yeah.
But then geography. Why is West Virginia in the Big 12? That makes no sense. Their gymnastics team has to travel 1,500 miles to go to Lubbock, Texas. And that makes no sense. Why would you do that to student athletes? On the one hand, and that brings up the hypocrisy. So the college presidents go, well, we can't have a 16-team playoff because, my goodness, there might be 4 teams that play an extra game in the third week of January, and they might miss a class. Meanwhile, you've got gymnasts on a bus for 4 days going to Lubbock, Texas. How does that make any sense? Reasonable people now, you can't make a case. So you're a hypocrite, number one.
Yeah. You're
corrupt, number 2, because of all the money. And basically you're not paying attention on the other end of this. So that's why there's such a concern here on my part. And if Texas and Oklahoma go to the SEC, which it's a lot of conversation. We haven't seen anything in stone yet on that. But what does that do to the whole game? Mm-hmm. Now you'll have a 16-team conference with the 2 teams that won the national championship when an SEC team didn't. Now you're up to 18 of the last 21 national champions will be all in one conference, right? And ostensibly all but one of those teams all in one division of the same conference if you did it geographically the way it's supposed to be done. That's a crisis among the sport. And then you have teams like UCF and Houston and good programs, Boise State, that because they don't bring anything else to the table, meaning money, they get left out of what could really help make this a more robust college football environment. So all of that together is when you hear that all at one time, right? Because you listen to these other shows, you listen to Paul Feinbaum, who, by the way, Paul Feinbaum does a great job, but he's SEC focused.
Yeah,
I don't live in the Big Ten footprint. You're a Big Ten guy. You're from that region, and one of the people that I used to do shows with, the Nebraska guy. He's in mourning, by the way. It's been a terrible week, but so the Big Ten brings a whole different dynamic to it, and so trying to get your arms around this, and then you have teams that have no business playing FBS football. Old Dominion.
Yeah.
Well, why are they doing that, right? They could have a very robust FCS schedule, just like their counterpart in Virginia, James Madison, has chosen to stay FCS. Very successful. They've won a national championship. You got North Dakota State, who's sending guys to the pros in FCS, which is where they belong. And so I think you've got a bloated FBS because ESPN funded all these bowl games. They beat a couple patsies, they get their 6 wins, they get to go to a bowl game and go, hey, look at us, we're a great program. And they're not. And they're spending money and they're wasting money because it's expensive to operate a football team. So
I can tell you're very passionate about this, Kevin. I think definitely laying out the problems, but we're solutions people. What can be done about this? What can actually fix some of this? Any ideas of what, NCAA or some of these conferences or teams, what they could do to address some of these issues?
Well, first of all, put somebody in charge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at the NFL. You can debate how you can disagree or agree with the commissioners of the NFL, but they are absolutely in charge.
Yes.
The 32 owners of those franchises have given that commissioner, and he's really out there to take a lot of heat. Yeah. They've done a good job. Well, from Pete Rozelle to Paul Tagliabue to you just go down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Put somebody in charge, and not a committee. Committees can't run anything. I was in business for 40 years in my career, and a committee never did anything.
Committees don't work.
They don't work. You run your own business.
Yeah.
There's not 4 of you running this business.
There's got to be somebody in charge. Yes,
somebody's got to be accountable, right? So that accountability. Secondly, pare down the sport. There shouldn't be more than 70 or 80 FBS teams. There just shouldn't, right? And when you do that, and I also think that you should pull football out of the rest of the conferences. Don't worry. The Big East, for instance, had a football conference that was very successful. Miami won a national championship playing in the Big East. Virginia Tech played Florida State for the national championship while in the Big East. It produced great – Donovan McNabb played in the Big East, right? Doug Flutie. These guys came from Big East schools, Boston College, Syracuse, Miami, right? So take those 80 schools, create 10 team conferences. They could all play round robin. You don't have to worry about scheduling problems, right? Mm-hmm. It's really very simple. The complicated part is people actually taking the first step and saying put somebody in charge. Because once you do that, it's pretty clear that West Virginia should not be in a conference that includes Texas Tech. I mean, Notre Dame is in the ACC, not in football. Well, they were last year, but that's because we're making this up as we go along, right? So, here's a great example, Ryan, of making it up as you go along in the hypocrisy. For years, the SEC has said we can't play more than 8 conference games because our conference is so tough that our players can't take it. Yet, in a COVID-ravaged season when injuries and sickness and illness was rampant, right? They played 10 conference games. Mm-hmm. They absolutely did it at the wrong time. You don't go to 10 when you're trying to field teams with COVID. You go to 6. You go to 7. You do something like the Big Ten did, which they did a very smart thing, right? So that's how this hypocrisy around all of this. So if you have 10 team conferences, and by the way, the Big 12, is like the redheaded stepchild right now. I think in my article I said, they're the kids in school that have the kick me sign on their back, but they did it right. They have a 10-team conference and they play everybody. The Pac-12 is not expanding. They have a 12-team conference, 2 6-team divisions, and they play almost a round robin. Yeah. Because they play five games in their own division and then 3 or 4 from the other division. So there's only like one team that they don't play every season. Okay, so they don't have the scheduling inequities that you have. But if you did that, if you took if you actually study geography, and they're obviously not teaching math and geography in these schools because otherwise they wouldn't be doing what they're doing, right? The Atlantic Coast Conference, how can you have Louisville and Notre Dame?
Yeah.
It's more than a day's drive to the beach, right?
Doesn't make sense, yeah.
So if you did that, so then let's say you have a 12-team playoff, which I think is a good number. I actually think 6 is a good number, but a 6 wouldn't work with a 10-team with 8 conferences because you want every conference to be represented. So if you had a 12-team, playoff, the 8 champions would get in. You'd have 4 at-large teams. You may end up with 3 from some southern, geographic bubble, right? But you could do that. I mean, I'll give you an example. Vanderbilt is in the SEC. They play football only because the SEC says they need to play football. Vanderbilt is atrocious.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the record, their history. James Franklin was there for 3 years, had 2 winning seasons. It's the first time they've ever had that. I mean, this is how bad that program is.
Yeah.
So if you take them out of the mix, all of a sudden you're down to 13 teams that you have to deal with in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you go, well, Texas A&M and Missouri don't belong in that geographic right footprint. So now you're down to 11. In Arkansas, you can get back to 10 SEC schools in a heartbeat and not even change the conference if you're creative about it, right? You just go back to where you were. You go back to Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee, and now you've got 10 teams in the SEC and don't have to touch it. And then you figure out what to do with the other guys. And then you throw a lower Midwest. You've got, take the old Southwest Conference. We could go back to the way it used to be and actually move forward. The Southwest Conference, that was Texas. That was the Texas schools in Arkansas. Why not? Take the Big Ten, break it up a little bit. Take Nebraska, Colorado, take the old Big Eight and add a couple schools to it, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be that complicated and that difficult to do.
Well, right? I think you figured some of this out right here, Kevin. I think you missed your calling in life. I think we need to put Kevin in charge here and get some of this cleaned up.
Well, I don't know if they're going to do it. I think we may not be able to put the ketchup back in the bottle, but I think we haven't even touched on the NIL stuff and student athlete kind of stuff on this. We've just talked about the organization itself of the NCAA of college football, and get the NCAA out of there. They are a joke. They are corrupt. Yeah. What have they done with all that money? They're paying executives hundreds of thousands of dollars to screw things up.
Right, exactly. Well, Kevin, I really appreciate you writing this article. I mean, I think it brings light to a lot of things, certainly opened my eyes to some things that, like you said, you see pieces of, you hear pieces of, but when you put it all together like this and then come on video and explain it, and I can tell you're very passionate about it as well, it really helps paint the picture of what's going on. And hey, you didn't just bring the problems, you brought some solution ideas as well, which is part of the battle. So really appreciate that, Kevin. And I look forward to future articles that maybe bring light to things as well. So thank you for all you do. And appreciate the time here with this video. But any last words, anything we missed? I know we could go all day. I know you could talk NIL. Maybe we'll talk NIL another day and focus on that as well. But anything you have left to say here before we jump off?
Well, I think I need to say that I'm a big fan. I mean, I'm a journalist, but I'm also a fan. And most of this passion you're hearing is from a fan perspective. I went to Virginia Tech, just to total transparency. We were fine not winning a national championship and having Frank Beamer there for 30 years, right? The expectation level was realistic at that school. And I'm not just saying that because I went there and because I'm a booster, but that's an example of how we've kind of gotten off track. That teams enter the season thinking that they have a chance to win. They don't.
Yeah.
I mean, look at it. They just don't. So, but I'm excited for football, and I enjoy working with you guys. And let's revisit this again another time.
All right. Sounds great, Kevin. That was Kevin Krest. Make sure you head out to usawager.com. We're going to be posting any adults left in the college football room. If you're watching this, you may see it right in the article. But if not, head out to YouTube, watch this video, head out to the site, read the article. I think it'll be a treat for you. And follow Kevin Krest, see what he is up to next. So, Kevin, thank you. Audience, thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ryan.